Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone here for taking your time to think about OER and OER policy at University of South Pacific. I'm going to give an overview and then provide a framework for us to work for the rest of the day and tomorrow. We already have a draft OER policy. I think it's distributed. So we'll work from that. Question some of those things in terms of clarifications and try to correct, edit those things and suggest the right way it should be done based on our understanding, of course, as a common understanding of after discussion and debate. But I also did a small survey, so I'll share some of those information. I hope all of you responded to it, but by the time I captured the data, I think I had 16 of the responses, but I have made the percentages thinking that that will give a good sense of for all of us in the university, let's think. And the third important thing I want to say, how many of you did this OER course, this SWOT OER course? Some of you have done. How many have actually completed and got a certificate?
It doesn't print.
You completed but couldn't print. Oh, it's just print means you have to save it to your things and you'll save it as a PDF. And then you print it. Oh, really? Oh, that you check about your pop-up in the Windows. So anyway, so good feedback. And I got some good feedback about how Steve thought about challenges our students face studying online. So thank you very much for those feedback that you give it to me. But I think we have some idea about this thing, and I will try to clarify more over the period that we are able to do these policy things. Som has done, given us a very broad framework and food for thought and some details rather, I will say, about the licensing. And I am not going into those details on the licensing. If there is a need, we can further discuss and debate about those things. Otherwise, these are available. Other than that, there is also a PDF version of that course. If some of you had challenges accessing that online course, there is a PDF version of that course as Understanding Open Educational Resources. If you search in Google, most probably you will find that on Commonwealth of Learning's repository, open access repository. So you can look into details about, and these are small documents. So and this OER is not rocket science that we can't deal with in 2 days' time. But I'll give some clarification a little bit on some of those issues. And this definition is the most important thing. And the picture that you see there is quite complex and perplexing, isn't it? And that's the design. And if you look at the OER world as such, this graphic covers everything. But we don't have to be bothered about those graphics at this stage. Sometimes I put that because many times what you think it's easy, so we can do it. But a systematic implementation of OER policy needs lots of thinking and lots of dimensions it has. And particularly in the context, if you are looking at a national context, institutional context are a little easier to handle because institutional framework is one of the things in the overall context of OER. And I use that for my reference point when I talk to the policymakers and at a national level. But going back to the definition that most of us use, open educational resources are teaching, learning, and research materials in any medium that reside in public domain. Okay, this is the keyword, public domain. Okay, what is public domain? Anyone would like to respond?
The open web.
Any other response? Yeah?
Just in the domain where all public can use it to open.
Okay, that's the layperson's understanding of public domain. But when this is used in this definition, public domain is used in the context of a legal term. And that's where most of the understanding of OER creates problem. Public domain in legal term is something if the author has relinquished copyright, number one, or if the copyright has expired. And copyright expiration means what? Each different country has different copyright expiration rules based on their own copyright laws. Okay. In general, it is 50 to 60 years post the death of the author. So for example, Shakespeare works, all the works of Shakespeare are in public domain. So biggest OER in that sense. Okay. So everything that is on the web, if you intend to go most of the pages down on the web, you'll see copyright so and so. So that means they are not in public domain. They are available for you for information, but they are actually not in public domain. But in our conversation, we often use public domain means the web. Okay, so that's what the public domain. If you saw this Creative Commons sites, some of the things where PD was written. Public domain means that. So either copyright relinquished by the author or the copyright expired. So this is a very critical piece in the definition. Okay. The second thing is states public domain or have been released under an open license. Okay. Open license is another critical component of it. And it says after that, open license that permits their free use, in some instances repurposing by others. Okay, that means you can do remix and other things. It means a public license, that an open license that allows repurposing, remixing and doing things. Okay. Creative Commons example, there are 6 different types of license. 2 of the licenses which are non-derivative, they don't allow to repurposing of the materials because the authors, those who want it to be ND, they probably don't want the integrity of the work to be changed in any way. Okay, and by the current knowledge of community understanding of OER, anything that is with an ND license is probably not OER. Okay, that means they are not open licenses. Out of the 6 licenses that Creative Commons proposes, Creative Commons has, 4 licenses are open licenses. 2 are not open licenses because they don't allow you to remix, adapt. You cannot create a derivative work out of that. So understanding these 2 important things in the definition is very crucial for going forward for our work. So when we say open licenses, so when we say Creative Commons licenses, we are talking about the 6 licenses. Okay, but when we are talking about open licenses, we are only talking about 4 licenses which are not with ND. Okay, so we have to be very clear in our policy formulation that are we talking about using only Creative Commons licenses or we want open licenses? I always suggest both And for example, my personal, I'm actually fighting with many OER evangelists that why can't ND also be open license, treated as open license as of now. But currently, the understanding in the OER community, open licenses means only those licenses which allows someone to create a derivative. If it doesn't allow a derivative, it's not an open license. Okay, so we can use. I believe personally, and in my policy work in institution and government, I always suggest use a framework. Don't talk about one license to be used. Allow a framework that somebody who is creating the resource decides what licenses appropriately it will be used. Because it's the remix that decides what licenses to be done, not just the policy you want to do it. If you are creating an original work, say for example, a research article published in a journal, that's the original piece of work. Okay, you have citations, references, duly acknowledged, and sometimes you have taken, if you have used graphics, you have taken permission from the copyright holder. Okay, and then if you are deciding to be released on CC BY or anything, that's okay, because that's an original piece of work. But if I am doing mixing some materials from here, some materials from there, then I have to see that what is the license I took from this material and what is the license I took from these materials, and how do I put the third material which I am creating in one license. These two licenses has to be compatible. So compatibility of licenses has to be checked. Okay, so for example, if you are doing a document which is CC BY SA, you can't mix with anything else, because it says if you are using my material, then it has the derivative that you create has to be CC BY SA. That's it. So you are using my CC BY SA material, your final product has to be CC BY SA. So that's a remix issues. So we need to look into those things while we are talking about our policy development things. And this kind of understanding and clarity is very important. That's what I would like to say as understanding of OER, and it's as simple as this. But from where we are coming out now, from since 2002, when the OER term was decided in a UNESCO meeting, which happened actually because of the developments in MIT, and before MIT it was also the Rice University in 1999, and before that 1998 open content was created by David Wiley terminology. So all those things were happening, and UNESCO thought about that, okay, let's bring together people in the developing world and try to understand this whole open courseware concept. And there they decided the term open educational resources. And you know what they said about the definition? They said the definition of open, the previous definition, which is most commonly currently used, and the first definition are completely different. And the first definition they talked about non-commercial use is OER. So definition, there is a swift and change in the definition of OER over since 2002. 2012 marked the 10 years, and we had the World OER Congress, and I understand Bruce attended that in 2012 there, which resulted into the 10 commandments kind of stuff that Shom showed. And few of those things I'm sharing this, that's OER Paris Declaration, which talks about creating awareness about OER, encourage development of and adaptation of OER in varieties of language and cultural context. I think to me, this is what is important for Pacific, for USP, for anyone else. You know, there was we all know, most of us probably know about this, that there was something called learning object movement some time back. And I always tell, why did it fail? Because education is contextual. something that you have developed may not fit for me in another context, particularly in economics. You have developed something here, economics, it won't work in Australia or even Samoa, it may not work. Okay, so you need to adopt the materials, and those learning objects were not adaptable neither because of the technology at that time, and nor they were all copyrighted. Okay, so you can't do anything with those materials. OER today allows you to adapt the materials available elsewhere to your own context and situations, and that's what is very important to take note of. And the third one that it talks about here, which is very critical to my work at Commonwealth of Learning, is that we encourage institutions and governments to create enabling policies that says that if public funds are utilized for creation of any material, it should be released with an open license, giving back to the public. And that's the whole essence here. We are not looking at patents, we are not looking at privately created materials. We are looking at materials created with public funds. It is also related to institutional policies, which means that works done for hire. If I have produced some materials under the contract of my work, it's not my work anymore. I might have the moral rights to those materials, but those materials are owned probably by the institution. And institution decides how the institution would like to share those materials. So, and if the institution is a public institution, naturally the OER Paris Declaration asks that those materials are released as OER. These are some of these ideas that I thought it's important to share out of this OER Paris Declaration. Not that others are not important. There are emphasis on research. Professor Zito was talking about there is more need for understanding and research, and those things are also there in the declaration. But overall, another important thing Som was talking about, why these Ivy League institutions and big institutions are coming towards OER and using those things. There is also a marketing value of sharing. So it's a reputational value of sharing your own knowledge and resources. As an institution, how would you like to build your brand around openness is also an important factor to look at. And that's how it's happening elsewhere. Would you like to do that by adopting a robust OER policy? So I'm also talked about finding of resources. I think there are lots of resources on the internet which are OER. And some of these are very reputed OER repositories I have listed here. MIT OpenCourseWare is widely known. I think also one of the most used. I have done some research on this, so I know that this is the one which is most used. There is OpenLearn. Not all materials of Open University UK are available, but they release selectively materials. This NPTEL is National Program on Technology Enhanced Learning, which is a Government of India project. It releases basic science and engineering and technology materials as video materials. And you'll find more than 3,000 videos on there, and these videos are highly used across the world. OER Commons. OER Commons is a platform which has all levels of educational resources. Some resources are complete, some resources are not complete in that platform, but it has robust materials. Siler.org, Siler Academy, which actually has, you'll be surprised, it has 23, I checked recently, and they have 23 bachelor's level computer science courses. So if you are running a computer science course at a bachelor degree level, you probably don't need to reinvent the wheel. Okay, so you can just take those materials, adapt into your own situation, and many more materials. OERU, in our backyard, probably here in the New Zealand. It started off from the Wiki Educator platform, but now it's the Open Educational Resources Universitas at the Otago Polytechnic. And they are trying to offer accredited courses from partners using open educational resources. Sia Vula is a great example for school level courses in Africa and South Africa, to be precise. They are producing school textbooks which are accredited by the government of South Africa and distributed to all the students in the country. There are many examples. These are a couple of examples to highlight. You could also have aspirations for OER. There is also a site, OER Fiji, and interestingly, Fiji has one of the national OER policy in the region, apart from Australia and New Zealand. I think Fiji is the only one in the region to have a national OER policy in higher education. But there is a OER Fiji site. But USP might like to think about a little higher aspiration of OER in the Pacific and create something bigger in the region, like some of these initiatives. I think it's important for all of us to think here these three questions. Now, the proponents of OER, people like Som and me, who are kind of talking about OER. By the way, Som and me, we developed a course called OER-based e-learning some 3 years back. And those materials are also available as OER. So when we guys talk about OER, we are passionate about these things. But I think it's important for every one of us to think about these three questions. OER evangelists talk about OER reduces cost, enhances access, improves quality. I think when we are developing a OER policy, all of us should understand what we mean by these terms. And reduces cost for whom? Is it for the student or reduces operational cost for the institution? Okay, it might be both, but we need to be very clear what we are doing. Textbook cost for students are very high. In a place like United States, students on an average spend about $1,200 in a year for buying textbooks. 65% of the students don't enroll in a course because of the textbook cost. And that also affects their grades and learning performances. What's the situation in the Fiji and what's the situation in the Pacific to the stakeholders that the USP meets? We need to think about that. If the student cost of accessing textbook is higher, I think it's a right and fit case for USP to develop OER materials. And also to think about, does it reduces my institutional cost? There are not enough research on this area, and I think USP might like to think about doing research in the cost of OER. There is some research that was done some time back, and we have found that almost 70% savings happen, institutional savings happen through use of OER. We did some work in Guyana some time back, and that's the research on that. But I think OER use has different models, and not many people have done research on this, like AG's use. If you are using something which is available and you are just doing it, you don't spend much money. But if you are reworking, remixing, revising, integrating existing material, the cost structures are different. I know the course cost of developing a course is about 12,000 Fijian dollars here, or something like that, 12 to 15,000 Fijian dollars. But if you use OER, in some courses, probably you can reduce about 70% of the cost of development of that. So this is enhance access. And access for what? Access to degree courses, access to lifelong learning. What is that we want to provide access? as an institution? Because we are already doing a flexible learning. What's that value proposition that OER brings in? In addition to that, our flexible learning opportunities like distance learning, online learning, and summer schools and other things that we are already doing. What's that access that means to us? Is it providing lifelong learning opportunity to the people in the Pacific and the global South, or what you want to say? I think that's important for you to think about and put in the value proposition in your policy, rationale of going forward policy. And third important thing, improves quality. People talk about improves quality quite often, and you will find a lot of people talking about this when they are talking about OER. But how? I think I am always perplexed when people talk about improves quality. How does silly textbook material improve quality? No, there is already textbook in the market, in the commercial textbook. If you buy that, and most management students know that there are very good textbooks people read and learn very well. How is that OER going to improve your quality? What additional value OER brings in that brings in quality? Yes, to some extent, as an enthusiast of OER, I always talk about, okay, sometimes OER are peer produced material, collaboratively produced materials. So one mind is many minds are better than one mind. So probably that brings in OER, the quality. The other thing I always talk about is that, okay, my material may not be of good quality, but if I release in OER, SOM can improve it. SOM cannot criticize my material anymore because I have released it open. If you are telling that it is a poor quality, improve it, SOM. Okay, so that's another way of looking at improving quality, that you are releasing it in open so that anyone else can improve the quality of that material. So you create the base and allow it others, the community, to improve work without spending much time. Okay, some of the academics will say, it is better for me to rewrite it than to improve your poor quality materials. That's having said. But what is important is the pedagogical practices that OER changes. OER is not about just textbooks production. OER can be anything. Your small graphics illustrations that you prepare, a PowerPoint, a handout, an article, a small video, a audio clipping, anything. So in your Moodle classrooms, you can bring lot many OER into your class rather than you're just depending on what you have produced. You can bring other materials around the world which are available on that topic, provide multiple perspectives. So what it improves is the quality because of educational transaction, not quality because of the material itself. And I think that understanding is important. OER improves quality because it allows a different educational transaction, different tradition of teaching and learning, flipped classrooms. Okay, I think it's not new because of Sal Khan. Flipped classroom have been there before, but luckily Sal Khan made it more popular. So these are the three things we need to think about in our context. When you rationalize OER policy, why are you doing OER policy for USP? I think you need to look at that. I think that's about OER for my side. I would like to quickly now go through some of the things that have happened here. And I was lucky in 2014 to part of this CFL review process. And one of the recommendations there was this, to develop an institution-wide OER policy. And I think we are moving towards that. The research, this questionnaire survey I did, this is the situation if you can generalize, which is not correct, is that the use of OER in USP in that sense is that 62% are using OER. The teachers are users of OER in that sense. May not be in the same understanding of the definition of OER, but when you ask OER, yes, we are using OER, 62%. In terms of contributors to OER, it's about 31%. Okay, so we need to see this situation in terms of how we can, how the policy can create more enabling environment for more teachers to contribute to OER. We don't know what this contribution means. This contribution means maybe they are creating PowerPoint slides and putting on SlideShare, because SlideShare gives you the option of different licenses. We really don't know what this means, but this is what the respondents themselves talk about. When you think about their roles as teachers, I think there is a mix of roles that USP expects from the teachers because of its different types of activities the university does: distance learning, online learning, face-to-face teaching, summer classes, and expectation in the management, and so on and so forth. So those respondents had different things. So, but this is also important for us to look at the role of the teachers in terms of OER production. So they are not just creating content; they are also doing a lot of other work. In terms of content creation, probably distance education. When they talk about roles in distance education, that's what they are doing, which is about 56%, and that's important from my perspective. When I was looking at that, that means 56% teachers are involved in creation of content, and this is that percentage that the OER policy will immediately help affect them. And if we have a robust OER policy, this 56% will become OER contributors. From 31% to, you can go to that 56% quickly. We also asked about the different types of motivations to look at, and these are some of the interesting facts that comes out. Most respondents think that, okay, OER is good, therefore, and it's good for developing countries. It's good for, it's a good teacher behavior to share, and those kind of things. Most are in altruistic in nature. Good to do it. But some of them are also talking about opportunities for collaboration and peer production. Some of them are expecting recognitions, improving professional image, credit towards promotion. There are also teachers who are thinking that OER is also helping improve their own learning and their students' learning. So the range of motivations are both intrinsic as well as extrinsic from the motivational jargon. We need to create a policy which captures both these motivational aspirations of the faculty. The policy should talk to both the groups, not just the people who are internally motivated, but also for those who are expecting certain kind of things to happen to them when they work on OER. And that's important. In terms of perceptions of quality, again, there is a range of mixed reactions, ranging from looking at pedagogical usefulness to a course. I think that came the most, followed by a trustworthy source. Who has produced, in order to reuse the materials, I will go to a trustworthy source to reuse the materials. But I would look at whether they are useful for my students. And they are looking at quality from those angles. They are also looking at questioning quality, but most of the respondents were undecided here. So you can see that it's maybe lack of understanding and things, but in a other way, interpretation for me is that it's a favorable situation. They're not questioning the quality of OER. They're kind of looking forward to OER to a large extent. Licensing, I'm not sure whether the respondents understood more about licensing, but they think that licensing helps to improve quality as a continuous quality improvement process. So some interesting facts on that. But this is the most important thing I would suggest out of the survey to focus on. What this small group of respondents thinking about the barriers to OER at USP. The biggest one is lack of knowledge for using OER in teaching and learning process. That means integrating OER in my teaching. It's not finding OER, the biggest problem here. How do I use educational processes, the kind of things, that we did in Malaysia and Sri Lanka and things. So this is important. Lack of understanding of intellectual property and licensing issues. The challenges that I talked about, the remixing, I think it's a very legitimate concern to start with when we're talking about OER. Institutional policy, yes, we are very much here. It will be taken care of. Finding is, of course, another inability to find, and which is, of course, related to the first one. If you know how to use it, that means you will using in a teaching and learning. The first thing is the finding. If I am able to find, first is finding, second is evaluating. I search something, I find something, okay, and then I evaluate its usefulness for my students and for my learning outcomes that I'm going to do. And then I'm looking at its appropriate use in my teaching, whether it is classroom, whether it is distance learning, and so on and so forth. So finding is definitely a challenge, and lack of recognition. So if somebody is working on OER, reusing lots of stuff from somebody somewhere else, is the person is going to be looked as a consumer. You have not produced any research article and not doing anything, looked down upon, or the person is going to be looked at, okay, he's an excellent teacher who makes best use of already available resources. So what brings these things talks to us? And in order to have a robust OER policy, what are the things we need to do? We need to review our existing policies, rethink about existing policies, and there are few policies which really need to be relooked at. First is about institutional IPR policy. I understand there is a handbook on IPR, copyright and IPR policy at USP. Am I correct? I don't have an access to that, but it's important that you look at that handbook. If there is an IPR policy, who actually owns the materials created by the faculty? Is there a contractual agreement with the faculty that happens? How learning materials are developed? Now, I see that sometimes you contract authors outside the institution as well. I think it's important to look at the content production process in the institution and look at OER policy in that context, because OER policy will have implication in these things. Human resource policy guidelines. I think it's to do with the contract that happens, not only with the full-time teachers, but also with the authors that the university contracts. Is content creation part of my job description? If I'm employed in the university, is it expected of me to do that? How is it related to the performance management, remuneration, and promotion? Because one of the things, then the barrier is that giving credits. Thanks. Does any of these need to be updated? Do you think there is a need for those things to be updated? When you think about these things, you need to flag these up. And the third important thing is to look at the ICT policy in the institutions. Is it easy to create a resource sharing site? How is open source software or hardware or software procured or supported? What are the do's and don'ts? Maybe because of bandwidth situation, you may not be allowing YouTube for students to access in the institution, or teachers to even access YouTube. And then that's not going to help OER, because you will be using a lot of videos in your teaching and learning. So I think it's need to be looked at in those things. And it's all about managing existing facilities. It's not that something will happen, then we'll do the OER policy. We have to wait till that ICT policy is done, then we'll do OER policy. It's not like that. It's about managing existing resources optimally. And how do we manage things? And how do we make changes progressively? The last one to be looked at is material development and quality assurance process. I understand in the CFL there is a QA process for material development that takes into account. But I think it has to be also looked from the point of view of every teacher doing quality assurance in their own teaching and learning, because OER policy is not for CFL, it's for all teaching and learning in the university. Every PowerPoint, every teaching notes that I prepare should go to the OER repository in the university for sharing and reuse. So quality assurance for everything. You need to develop a workflow mechanism for uploading resources to your OER repository. Who does those kind of things? Checking that materials are not copied and plagiarized from others' resources, which might bring bad reputation to the institution at a later stage. So I think it's important to look at these 4 important aspects when we are looking at OER policy. Having said these things, I will quickly go through this SWOT analysis, what I expect you to do after lunch. When you are looking in group, you should start with analyzing the institutional situation first, and then work on those things. Because knowing what we are trying to do in the context of OER is important first. So I would suggest you go through the SWOT analysis process first. So what I say we'll talk about strength. Think about the vision and mission of USP related to OER. This could be your strength. We could start from there, that USP has this vision and mission which is related to OER. Commitment of senior management to OER, which I know very well. It is one of the strengths at this moment. Professor Rajesh Chandra is a strong proponent of OER, and many other. Now Som is here. Availability of content expertise. I think you have great experts here in the university. They are content experts. I think that's one of your strengths, which you need to build to be a leader in OER. And there are some areas I know, like climate change. Some time back, Call was collaborating with the USP to do a MOOC on climate change, and I was told the best experts are here. Yeah, that was done. So that kind of an expertise you already have. So look at those. What are your strengths? These are few things I'm talking about, what I mean by strength in the context of OER. And you also look at what are the affordances of OER that adds to your institutional strength. Som talked about several things. I talked about several things about OER. How those affordances of OER are going to be strength for the university's OER policy. This is important to be a thing, because many times when I talk about weaknesses in institutions, people don't come forthright. They just try to be, okay, I can talk negative of my institutions. It's not about the institutional weaknesses, okay? It is about talking about what can be improved in the institutions to mainstream OER. It's not about criticizing something. It's putting something in a positive way that, okay, these are the things that need to be improved in my institutional context. That could be like professor in the morning talked about understanding of OER. If you identify the weaknesses, you can build the policy in the right way, and then you can build a strategy to take care of those weaknesses. In 3 years' time, you will have that plans actualized. Your vision of OER will be easy to see after 3 years or 5 years' time if you have understanding of your weaknesses. You can also think about the challenges faced by teachers in creating teaching learning materials. And here I mean teachers that include CFL people, because they are developing a lot of teaching learning materials, and they might have several challenges to list. The listing of these things are important in terms of policy creation. Look at the positive aspect. When you are doing OER, what are the opportunities that OER brings to the University of South Pacific? Why should USP participate? What are the opportunities that are waiting for us? What are the benefits, including reputational value? Is it going to bring more reputation to the university, USP that it already has? Or it's just another add-on? You need to think about these things. You guys knows more than anyone else. How is it going to change institutional practice in future? Is it a futuristic vision to go for OER? Is it just a cost-saving issue? Is it an educational transaction issue that quality of the ranking of the quality of the institution is going to be higher and higher, or something else? How is it going to improve the institution's reputation amongst its peer and in the world because of its OER work? If we aspire to improve the reputation, what would be the best way to do it? Just OER, or OER for the Pacific, OER for USP, or OER for the Pacific? What would be our strategy for OER in the institutions to take forward? So I think these are the things you need to look at, opportunities that OER brings into the university. And last but not the least is thinking about threats. If you don't do OER, what's going to happen? What are the current level of threats in teaching and learning practice in the university? What are happening? How many students are not able to access teaching and learning opportunities in the Pacific? Is OER going to help those people? Is there a framework in the university that allows people to do studies, self-studies using OERs and get back to do certification? Maybe. What are the possible threats to the institutions due to OER? Is OER itself going to bring certain kind of threats to you? Maybe. Maybe. Because if you are, like Som was asking a question that, what stops you from sharing the learning content? I asked this question in one university. They said, we don't know, some of our materials may be plagiarized and copyright violations must be there in our materials, so we are not very sure. That was the answer I got. So if you put those kind of materials as OER, certainly you are going to bring bad reputation. So that's definitely a threat. Okay. What are the competitions that you have currently? How those things, competing challenges that are going to impact decision on USP to implement OER? There may be competing challenges like access, which is currently being addressed from, I think it will be a 10-fold increase on the bandwidth now, maybe by the end of the year. But what are the other competitions that are going to affect? I'm not sure what those might be, but you need to think about those as threats. If you do this SWOT analysis, and if you can look at this in a group, identify those things and put those things, I think we can prepare a chart and then put it forward. And people in the CFL can actually, based on that, can develop the strategy to mitigate those things. And those things, once we look at ourselves, and then we can work on the policy drafting and revision process.